Are you in Mississippi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you at Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I've been grounded.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Katie from Greenlight, and we're thrilled to host tonight's event with Deesha Philyaw presenting her new book, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. She'll be talking with Kiese Laymon, so you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Deesha, Kiese, and the team at West Virginia University Press for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. So we're not able to host events in our store spaces. Our community of authors and readers is still here. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. Before we get started, there's just a few housekeeping things to go over. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here though, and you can see a count of fellow attendees at the top of your Zoom screen. The exact location will depend on what kind of device you're using. You're welcome to post your comments and thoughts in the chat. It's a great way to show your support for the author and to interact with fellow attendees. But if you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post that question in the Q&A module. You can find it by clicking on the icon that looks like two little speech balloons. We'll be pulling questions only from the Q&A to be answered in the later part of the program. So please make sure you're putting them there and not in the chat. We are recording tonight's event, so look for audio or video versions on our social media channels later on. And importantly, tonight's featured book, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. We're excited to be able to offer actual shopping at our bookstore locations, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. every day of the week. And you can purchase Deesha's book and many others on site. Or you can order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup in the store or for shipping anywhere in the US. If you care about supporting the careers of authors and the ongoing existence of independent bookstores, buying tonight's featured book is a great way to show your support. Our interviewer tonight is Kiese Laymon. He is the award-winning author of Heavy, an American memoir, which was named a best book of 2018 by the New York Times, Publishers Weekly, NPR, Broadly, BuzzFeed, The Washington Post, Entertainment Weekly, and more. He is also the author of the essay collection, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, and Long Division, a novel. He teaches at the University of Mississippi and has taught at Vassar College and the Iowa Writers Workshop. He will be speaking with our featured author, Deesha Philyaw. Her writing on race, parenting, gender, and culture has appeared in the New York Times, The Washington Post, McSweeney's, The Rumpus, Brevity, Tonight, and elsewhere. Originally from Jacksonville, Florida, she currently lives in Pittsburgh with her daughters. Her new book, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, explores the raw and tender places where Black women and girls dare to follow their desires and pursue a momentary reprieve from being good. The 9 stories in this collection feature 4 generations of characters grappling with who they want to be in the world, caught as they are between the church's double standards and their own needs and passions. Deesha will be talking with Kiese and then with all of you. Please take it away.
Hey.
Hey. Good,
Fam,
good to see you.
I'm so happy to be here with you right now. I mean, like we were talking on the phone like a few times a week while you were finishing this book. And yes. now, not only is it a finalist for the National Book Award, but fucking this pandemic plague moment is upon us, and we talking to each other in front of motherfuckers on a screen, fam.
And I'm looking at all the folks that are chiming in and just so many people that we love, and they're giving us so much love. I'm thrilled to be here in general, but especially with you. You know how much you mean to me. You know how much you mean to this book coming to fruition. So I'm going to start crying. I'm sorry.
Don't start crying yet. Because you got to read Peach Cobbler before you cry, fam. Oh, if I get out of this mug and you don't read Peach Cobbler, I'm going to be tight. But for real though, can I just say, fam, like, I love you so much. And like, if you don't know Deesha, you know how much she loves us when you read this book, fam. I mean, like, and we're going to talk about all of this, and I'm probably going to say things that, you know, I might embarrass you because it's
okay.
I'm absolutely categorically in love with what you did with this text. But everybody hasn't read the book yet. So I'm wondering if we could get it started by just having you read a few pages from what is my favorite short story in the collection today. I think it changes week by week, but today I would love to hear you read Peach Cobbler, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to read, let's see here. I'll read the first 2 pages. My mother's peach cobbler was so good, it made God himself cheat on his wife. When I was 5, I hovered around my mother in the kitchen, watching, close enough to have memorized all the ingredients and steps by the time I was 6, but not too close to make her yell at me for being in the way, and not close enough to see the exact measurements she used. She never wrote the recipe down. Without having to be told, I learned not to ask questions about that cobbler or about God. I learned not to say anything at all about him, hunching over our kitchen table every Monday, eating plate after plate of peach cobbler, and then disappearing into the bedroom I shared with my mother. I became a silent student of my mother and her cobbler making ways. Even when I was older and no longer believed that God and Reverend Troy Neely were one and the same, I still longed to perfect the sweetness and textures of my mother's cobbler. My mother, who fed me TV dinners, baked a peach cobbler with fresh peaches every Monday, her day off from the diner where she waited tables. She always said Sunday was her Monday. I'm sorry, Sunday was her Saturday, and Monday was her Sunday. What I knew was that none of her days were for me.
Mm.
And for many of those Mondays off and on during my childhood, God, to my child's mind, would stop by and eat an entire 8x8 pan of cobbler. My mother never ate any of the cobbler herself. She said she didn't like peaches. She would shoo me out of the kitchen before God could offer me any, but I doubted he would have offered, even if I'd sat right down next to him. God was an old fat man, like a black Santa, and I imagined my mother's peach cobbler contributing to his girth. Some Mondays, God would arrive after dinner and leave as I lay curled up on the couch watching Little House on the Prairie in the living room. Other times, my mother and God would already be in the bedroom when I got home from school. I could hear moaning and pounding like a board hitting a wall as soon as I entered the house. I would shut the front door quietly behind me and tiptoe down the hall to listen outside the bedroom door. Oh God, oh God, oh God, my mother would cry. I could hear God too, his voice low and growly saying, yes, yes, yes.
You know what's crazy? And then at the end of that story, um, there's this two lines, and then I dropped my fist because in the meantime I had nowhere to go. And the build up to that, because she gets smacked twice, right?
Yeah.
And just the build up to that, fam, was just like, okay, I'm not gonna be professional tonight at all, and I don't care
it's
if
me.
people, I'm just gonna be in love, fam, because like I just think what you've done with this story, with the collection as a whole, one of the biggest questions I really wanted to ask you, and that I'm afraid to ask you in front of people, is like, could you have done this had you gone through the traditional New York publishing routes? Could you have done what you pulled off in this book? I'm sorry, Sam. I just want to talk.
No, I love the question. And I don't know. I can't say with any confidence that I would, because I only have my one other prior publishing experience, which was with a smaller press that only published clinicians, like people with letters after their name, but they had the vision of a co-parenting book written by co-parents, even though we weren't lawyers, we weren't social workers or therapists. And so I had that editing and publishing experience, which was fine. And then all I know about big publishing is I know your story. You just bought your shit back, and so I know how that goes. I read the essays in How to Kill Yourself and Others Slowly, and know what your publishing experience is. I have other friends who've had publishing experiences, and their stories are not mine to tell. But what those stories helped me to do was really doubly appreciate the experience I had at West Virginia University Press. The editing experience, I don't know that I would have gotten that somewhere else. The respect, the respect for these characters and their voices and me as the authority on this culture,
Right.
unparalleled, I think, based
Right.
on what I've heard from, other folks who had other situations. I never had to defend Blackness. I never had to, I didn't deal with somebody white trying to tell me what these Black women would say or do. Um, there was so much respect in the process. And still, the book that's here is a better book than what I submitted in my manuscript. So
Woo.
I still had a fantastic editor who made it a better book than what I gave her.
Right.
But I didn't have to fight for it. I didn't have to prove anything about how we talk and how we do. And so one of the last edits that was made, and my editor's name is Sarah Georgie, and I just appreciate her so much. It was in the story Jael,
Yeah.
and there's a line where the great grandmother says, "I stay prayed up,"
Yeah.
and I can't remember what Sarah did, but tense is all mixed up in there, and so she was like, should it be this?" And I said, no, 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 that's the way we say, I stay
Right.
prayed. I stay prayed up. I stay prayed up, present tense.
Right.
And she, of course, had not heard that expression before, but we were good after that. Like, it was
Right.
always, I wonder if, and just asking for clarification, not putting me in a defensive place. It was such respect for the culture. She did fact checking, right? And she was like, okay, I fact checked everything, but I couldn't verify that large crabs cost $7 a dozen in Jacksonville, Florida in 1985. Are you sure? And I was like, or 1984. I said, I'm positive. And she was like, okay, we'll just check that off. But she was in the weeds like that, and with so much love and respect. So I hope, I would hope for all of us that regardless, that we don't have to be at one place or another to get that kind of love for our work, that we can get it in other places. I don't know. But I know Sarah is a special person.
That's what's up. And I don't wanna with that question, I don't want to blanket New York publishing, right? Because there are a lot of different kinds of editors, a lot of different kinds of publishing houses.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to, in this conversation for a bit, talk about the worst of New York publishing.
Okay.
And I want to talk about it in relationship to pleasure, because we're word people. We know that this book tells you that there's like 65 different kinds of pleasure at least.
Yes.
And one of the things that I hate about the worst parts of New York publishing is that in trying to what they call broaden an audience, which often is whitening an audience, they actually are precluding Black folk from taking part in pleasurable experiences created by other Black people. Like, this is a pleasurable book, not just because you're exploring the politics of pleasure, the politics of church, the politics of sexuality and sensuality, but like but stay prayed up. The fact that Peach Cobbler like repeats over and over and over and over again, and that means so much. Before we got on here, I was like, I want you to read, and I got it confused. I started calling it pound cake, because pound cake and peach cobbler were not just comfort food in our house, they were pleasurable foods, right? So can we talk a bit about the pleasure you had in knowing you had created a book that would create pleasure in other people like me and other people who were at this thing tonight?
Yes. One thing that someone noted is that there aren't any white people in this book. And I'm thinking about Toni Morrison and I'm thinking about August Wilson, who were both asked about their focus on Black people exclusively and Black life exclusively. And they both, kind of threw the question back. Toni Morrison, was like, you wouldn't have asked me that if I was a white author, about Black people. And August Wilson said, there's no facet of the human experience that's not reflected in Black life. I could write about the Black experience in America forever. And so, they gave me those marching orders. They gave me that comfort. And so I only thought about us. I only imagined that it would be our gaze, right? At the same time, the book is accessible to everybody. And so it is possible to do that. And it was nice that I didn't have an editor or anybody telling me I had to put people in this book who weren't already in there so that the other people could relate to it. I didn't have that experience, and I'm really thankful for that. And Black laughter, Black pleasure, whether, the humor and sex, those are the two places where, like, we really have to seek that out. There are not a lot of platforms for that for us. I'm thinking about Fran Ross's novel Oreo, that somebody had to bring it back. A Black woman scholar brought it back, just like Alice Walker brought back Zora Neale Hurston's work. The first, and maybe only at this point, I don't know, satirical novel by a Black woman. So laughter is pleasure, sex is pleasure, sex, all of it's complicated. And so, I was like, go home or go hard for me. Like, I couldn't be inhibited writing these stories, because the whole point was, what happens, what are those interior lives, what are those secrets, what are those things that we say as Black women, either only to other Black women or only to ourselves or only to our journals. And there are those pleasures that in many cases we do keep secret. And so it would not do for me to hold back in a book about that, right? So I had to step up.
And one of the things I love about, one of the things I really love about Morrison, Robert Jones has his new novel coming out called The Prophets.
Ooh,
and Nafisa. Now these are different books completely. But one of the things I love about all of those books, and I love about this book, Deesha, is like, you in some way dare us to catch up from page one. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you set that story out, like, we have to catch up those parts of us that are puritanical, those parts of us that are of the church and we know, but we haven't seen it. And so with that first story, talk about the sequencing and what you hope to achieve by putting Eula as the first story.
So a little bit of it was sentimental, in that Eula was the first story of the 9 that was published when I was, publishing these. Some of the stories in here were published before it became a book. And so it was a little sentimental, but more than that, I did what what you just said, which was like, you got to check in with all that puritanical stuff. I'm going to put it here right up front to let you know how we getting down in this collection, and you can rock with us or not, and that's cool. But to know exactly what you're in for with that book. It's one of the most provocative stories, one of the most titillating. It has the most sex, I think. It has also the most Bible in it too.
Yes.
So it's like both of those things happening at the same time. And, it's like a warning almost, like, this is, what you're in store for. So that was a very intentional choice.
And that part in that story, when they're talking about virginity, and then the one character is like, what we've been doing, you know what I'm saying? Like, and it's so interesting because it's such a short story, but at that point, I'm thinking 90% of the readers are still like, what? You know what I mean? Like, I just think that's hard to pull off in a story. Here's another question that I want to ask you, not just Deesha, the personality, but the sister who I love. Do you find pleasure in the Bible?
It's been a minute since I read the Bible.
Yeah.
So I would not make it as a blanket statement, but I have found pleasure, and not in the places where they, usually say, like Song of Solomon. Everybody talks about that. But I find pleasure in, like, the dark stuff, like Jael.
Right.
Like, the reason I wrote that story is because somewhere I read about that story in the Bible, and then I was like, she did what? So I went and got the Bible and I looked it up, and I was just fascinated by the story of this woman, I like to retell it like this. Like, he knew what he was getting into. He went to his enemy's wife's house, tired. So, we could talk about what his motivations were there. So I thought, that's curious. And he's tired from battle. His army's fighting her husband's army, and he like comes to her house. And then she did as we do. Oh, come on in. Hospitality. And he asked for water, and she gave him heavy cream. So like, you asked for just a little bit, I'm gonna give you more than what you asked for. He should have known right then. But
of course.
And then so he drank the heavy cream, he got the itis, he fell asleep, and then she nailed his head to the floor. So I was like, I did not see that coming. So that stayed with me. And then the way I write a lot of stuff is sort of like, what if? And so I was like, what if there was a Black girl who had that name, who, her people clearly were in the, her family, they were in the church, and somebody named that girl that. Why did they do that? And what kind of, like, what would that mean for her life? Like, what kind of girl would she become? How much would her name, influence that? And then, kind of the, writer side took over, and I was like, okay, if I did this parallel, and so she does something like what the woman in the Bible does, what does she do and why? So I find pleasure in like that dark stuff.
No doubt. And one of the things that I like, you sent me a version of this. I mean, pandemic got my head messed up. I don't know. I don't remember when it was, but it felt like it was a year ago. Was it a year ago?
Last year. All this happened in a year.
All this happened last year?
In March of last year.
Sam, that's crazy, because there was a point when I read the joint and you were like, I got to work on these 2 more stories to get it right. But I've been reading the Bible a lot for this new project I'm working on, and I've been thinking about the way tales / stories / chapters end. And most stories and narratives, either end on like a resolution, a realization. And I think some really great ones consistently end on like a really messy revelation.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like in addition to the character interactions that you portray so well, the dramatic scenes that you just render incredibly well, the sights, the traditions that you unravel and then re-ravel and unravel. I just think you're doing something consistently well with like revelation and ending. And I think revelation is completely different than resolution, which is what capitalism necessitates, right? That's one of my questions about New York. But like, could you talk to me about like, if you are attempting, when you end not just this book, but when you end these stories, are you thinking about revelation? And sometimes revelation can be very slow. I mean, very, very soft, but it's like there's a reveal in almost every last line.
Yeah. I have to go back and look at the endings of each story, because I'm going to be teaching a master class at a university, and it's up to me, and I think I want to do it on endings in this book. And so everyone is different. Every single one is different. There's some stories in here where I knew what the last line was going to be before I finished the story, and it was like I was writing to that. And so I wish I could say that, there was a particular way that I approached it, but every story just asked for something different. The ending that I love the most is with in Dear Sister, where it's the PS. Grandma wants to know if you're pregnant.
That's the best. That
was the ending where I was like, pat my own self on the back. I was like, that's nice. That's nice.
You did that.
It felt right. It really felt right. I struggled with happy endings because I had to get out of and maybe it's the whole revelation versus resolution, but for whatever reason, I had to get past this idea that somehow the ending couldn't, like, people couldn't just be in love, and that people couldn't just be okay. And so you've got stories in here where people are not okay at the end, or you don't know how they are at the end. And so How to Make Love to a Physicist and Snowfall, where you end with, with scenes of people loving each other, was weird. That, like, I was like, is this like, is it too sickening sweet? Is it too, saccharine? I don't, and that's the whole dark thing. Like, I have to tell myself, everything doesn't have to be dark, but I like the way you framed it, which is those were both revelatory moments, but different, as opposed to like happy ending versus not happy. But there was, revelation for everybody, involved in those. And then when Eddie Levert comes, this is so weird. Like, I knew I wanted to end with the mother singing, that last part of Forever Mine. So I felt like I was writing towards that moment. I knew that because I love the OJ so much, and I love that song, and they were my mother's favorite group. And so sometimes it was like, I treat writing like a math problem. Like, how do I get from here to there? Or if I put these three things together, what's gonna happen?
But you know what's crazy to me, fam? And I'm saying crazy, like I mean that word, like, in the dopest, most loving way possible. It's like, we were talking about this book and all kinds of other shit, right? Months ago.
Yeah.
And now you got people up in here talking about the stories the way our people used to talk about the stories. You know what I'm talking about? Like, these motherfuckers in the chat, they talk about the stories like my grandmama used to talk about Victor and them. You know what I'm saying?
Who is in my book?
Yes, I know.
Victor, Jill, and Miss Chancellor in there.
Yes.
People talk to me. They want to fight the mother in Peach Cobbler. People want to meet a dude like Eric Turman. Shit, I want to meet a dude like Eric Turman.
Okay, but here I want to make sure I give people, because people have been reading this book and interacting and feeling this book so much more, I think, than just like a regular Zoom. I want to make sure we get people's questions in. And also, these are people we love. Alex Hardy says, what food represents both of your moods right now?
Ooh, did you say both of my moods?
I think he means both. I think he means you and me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think. And Alex Hardy is like a food dude. He's a food dude.
Alex, so I got shout out to Alex. Alex has been getting a lot of Black folks through this pandemic with these virtual work sessions, right? So you feel less alone, you get your work done, and thank you, Alex, because you have gotten so many of us through it. For me, my mood right now is, I gotta say biscuits. Specifically with lavender honey, because that's been this like pandemic moment. I perfected my flaky cutout biscuits, and then I found a Black family owned bee farm, and I bought some lavender honey from them, and like, it's just an experience of baking it and then eating it, and comfort. It's comfort. It is literal. We need that comfort right now, and we can find it in a lot of places, but I have found comfort in biscuits and lavender honey in this pandemic. How about you?
Oh shit. It's like, you remember that Cosby show where the motherfucker was tapping and then the dude like challenge and Fam, I can't compete with that, but like, I've been having a rough month, so I found pleasure in the fucking oatmeal pie 2 days ago.
Like
you like, what's that? Like
I know what oatmeal
Little Debbie's,
like
fam.
Okay,
Little Debbie's. I was just like, sometimes you just feel like shit, and you're like, yo, I wonder if that shit food that I used to eat would make me feel better. And the answer is always no. But I ate the fuck out of that.
The nostalgia, And isn't everything tinier than you remember?
Yo, I was like, did the niggas' hands get bigger, or did these motherfuckers get tiny? Because I remember the oatmeal pie, yo. Like, I don't want to get it. This ain't about my eating habits. Let's keep on getting to people here. So,
okay,
this is from Robert Jones. Deesha, do you realize how this work places you on a plane with and in possession of the direct inheritance from Zora Neale Hurston, Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, Gloria Naylor, and Gail Jones? And if so, how does that feel? What does it mean to you that 100 years from now, folks will be reading this book and it will inform tons of scholarship?
You just took my breath away. The idea of that just makes, just stops me in my tracks. I feel good about that because if that comes to fruition, that means that people will be talking about Black women and pleasure and desire and freedom for a long time in this way of us telling our own stories, us telling the truth about ourselves and our mothers, and the church. So the idea of that makes my heart glad, that if this means that Black women are going to be centered in the conversation, in the canon, Black Southern women, that's what I want. That's what I want. And so I hope that comes to fruition. That's what's important to me, for that to be forever, so that when people talk about, the books that should be taught and the writing that should be taught and the stories that endure and the stories that are timeless, Black women should have always been in the center there. So I hope that that comes to fruition so that we can have that place, and not just one place, right? And because we are not a monolith. Right. And so adding these women and their stories alongside Morrison and Naylor and all those other women who I grew up reading as a teenager to understand what was possible for me as a Black woman. Just like I looked at the women at the church and the women outside of the church, I've always been looking at Black women, including Black women writers, to see what's possible. And so I hope that this book can take a place like what Robert described, so that other Black girls and other Black women can see what's possible, to see that it's possible to be free, that it's possible to not hold your breath and suck in your stomach and take off a girdle and tell your mama no, and and choose yourself first. So I hope so.
And you know what, fam? Like, I wasn't gonna say this, but and I probably should say it in code because I didn't ask you if I could say this out loud.
You can say, only one, you can ask me.
Okay, so there was a point last year when professionally you made a decision that made me so fucking scared for you, but also it made me rethink this old, the idea now, like, trust Black women. I think I had not thought about it from the POV of a Black woman. And what I saw you doing in that situation was trusting yourself. And I was just like, I didn't ever say this, but I was just like, are you sure you want to do that, fam? Are you sure you want to, like, put all of your fucking eggs, whatever the fuck, ducks over here? And you were like, I got to do this. And you did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm happy to talk about that. I was working for a Fortune 200 company, a bank in corporate communications. And I had been there 3 years. And it was, the polite way we say it, was a toxic work environment. And I said, I'm out by December. And by December, I felt like financially I could maybe, be ready then. But then one day, the person that I reported to was on that bullshit again. And we were about to have a conversation. I was about to get talked to. And I could overhear her preparing for this conversation with me. And I don't know, Kiese, like I just started packing my shit up. Like I didn't have a plan. What I knew was that she was not going to talk at me or talk to me that day. I didn't know anything beyond that other than I'm grown and that this is not going to happen. And so I packed my stuff up, and I even cleaned up like all the stuff that was garbage. Like I threw it all away, and I had, most women know you got the extra bags at work. So I had all of my other, all my shoes that I kept at work, all that stuff. So I had 2 big bags. I left their little key. I left the laptop, all of that stuff, cleaned the desk off. I packed up my kids' pictures, and walked downstairs, and stood on the sidewalk, and I resigned by email on my phone. And then I got on the bus and I went home. And I didn't know what was going to happen after that. All I knew was that I could not do that another minute of having somebody tell me who I am and what I can do, and someone who needed me to be small. So somebody interviewed me recently, and they wanted to have the dramatic narrative of I quit my job so I would have more time to write. I was like, my book was done. Like
Word.
It was not it.
Word.
I left because I decided, that was enough, and decided that I had hit my limit of being in that box. I was not going to be in that box. And it was other Black women who supported me, in material ways to help me, get to that point. But yeah, that's what I did. I didn't know you were worried.
Fail. It's just the Black Mississippi, we always like, you got to have a job or two before you quit it. You know what I'm saying?
Always.
And you know, right. In Florida, the same thing. And like, and we can talk about this off. I want to make sure we get everybody, but I just want to say, that kind of, it's not will, it's not courage. It's just, it's beyond anything I can concretize here, but that belief in yourself, like that belief in real talk, that belief that you are worth more than being treated like shit. Like I talk a lot of shit at my job, but that's because I've taken a lot of shit at my job. And I've never, ever in my job life had the wherewithal to leave one when I didn't have another one, which is how they get us, right? But anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because I think that too was in the tradition of Hurston and Naylor, and I would even add Tony Cade. Okay, so Lisa Bear asks, what will it take for Black writers to get the same respect, i.e. not telling you how Black women will talk, walk, be, and Paycheck is white writers? What will it take for Black writers to get the same respect and Paycheck as white writers?
It's going to take more Black people in publishing being gateways instead of gatekeepers. And I'm like giving out all the secrets, but the National Book Award ceremony is coming up, and all of us have to write an acceptance speech because you don't know if you're going to win or not. So you have to have one ready. And so I started working on mine, and I have a line in there thanking you, Kiese, for being a gateway and not a gatekeeper in publishing, and saying there's room for so many of us at the table, instead of this mindset that somehow we're in competition with each other. We're not in competition with white people either, and we're not in competition with each other. It is, here's a table, there is a bounty, we are the bounty. Come and sit with me. Come and get this book deal. Come and get this blurb. And so that's what we need, is the people, the Black folks who have the power. And we are seeing more and more Black folks moving into those positions of power, be gateways for each other. Because white folks may or may not do right by us, but at a minimum, we need to do right by each other when we can. And Toni Morrison, I mean, we could quote her all night. She said, the point of freedom is to help somebody else get free.
Right.
It's not just for you.
Right.
And so when that happens, then we just keep it going, right? And so, and now I'm in a position to do for somebody else what you did for me, and I'm gonna do it every chance I get.
Well, thank you for doing for me while you thought I was doing for you. So, and also I just feel like Damon. I just feel like sometimes
Yes,
I just feel like we need to throw Damon. You know, like Damon Young,
love him.
made a way for a lot of different people. Do you know, a lot of
Yes,
different sensibilities
yeah,
that we
yeah.
might not even. You know, I had a book out before Damon did, but Damon Young made a way for me to actually like be free enough to talk to you about crazy shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because y'all was both from Pittsburgh. And my boy Ryan
yeah,
Canty's from Pittsburgh. And my cousins in there
yep,
from Pittsburgh. And then, you know, we met at that event that night. It was in that like
yeah.
weird
The
hotel
ace,
slash like
the ace
boys
in
club or
the
some shit.
gym. Yeah, it used to be a
Oh,
YMCA. Yeah.
I was getting mad boys club vibes off of that shit. Okay. Oh, one day I would love to pay whatever amount of money to see you and Miriam Williams speak. So Miriam Williams asked,
She's in here.
yes, hi Deesha. I felt
Hey,
like the narrator in Peach Cobbler is the same person as the narrator in the Rules for Married Husbands. Does that parallel exist for you?
it was absolutely Miriam, and I did not plan that. I think subconsciously I couldn't let that girl go, and it's what you said, Kiese, like the revelation happened, but not the resolution. And
Mhm.
all we knew is that she didn't have anywhere to go. We didn't know where she went. We didn't know, how things turned out for her. And
Mhm.
and she was still with me when I was writing that story. So Instructions for Married Christian Husbands is not the last story in the book, but it's the last one I wrote. And I
Wow.
was writing it, and then there's this part where she's talking about herself, and she was like, and I make the best peach cobbler in town. And I was like, it's her, right? And I used to think that like writers were lying when they say that like the character spoke to me and the character
Right.
showed up and all that. I was like, yeah, that's some bullshit. But it really did happen like that. And it gave me some closure, I guess, in that, we can debate whether she turned out okay or not. It depends on your definition of okay. It depends on your
Yeah.
definition of free.
Right.
But that absolutely is a tie that's there. And I've had people ask me too, like once they saw that tie, then they were like, are there other ties that I missed? There are no other ties. I can say that, they are
Oh,
all
man, why
standalone.
you tell them? You know, if you ain't tell me, these motherfuckers
They
would be
keep
like,
reading.
child, and I know this the same nigga, you know?
so I'll let them off the hook with that. But
Oh,
I
that's
just
funny.
want to circle back and give a shout out to Damon Young. Also, man, I've known Damon since like the early 2000s, back when we were both blogging and before VSB was VSB. And Damon is someone who is also a gateway and not a
No doubt.
gatekeeper.
No doubt.
Damon has been invited to do things where, he's the headliner and I'm, interviewing him or whatever. And he'd be like, no, we're going to be in conversation. We're going to do this as peers. And he didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or he would say, I'll do it, but Deesha needs to do it with me.
Right.
And so there are ways all of us have some degree of privilege, even if it's just experience. We've got more experience at this than someone else does. And so that's what's happening with me right now, that, people ask me to do things. And it's like, I know so many Black writers. I'm like, she can do that.
Right.
She can do that. Has she done it before? No, but I know she can.
Right.
And I know that I couldn't do it until somebody gave me a chance.
Right.
And so that's what we have to do, is like, in our whatever our sphere of influence is, there are opportunities that we can either pass on or share with somebody else, who has less privilege than we do, who has less access than we do, less opportunity. And this is not like what did Toni Morrison say, it's not a candy grab bag. I say it's pie. It's not pie, right? It's not like we're going to eat and then it's all gone, right? It is not pie. Right. And so we share.
No doubt. And the scarcity model teaches us,
listen,
not to, amongst other things, it teaches us not to share, but it also teaches us to hoard, which is the difference between not sharing. You know what I'm saying? Like I've had people ask me to write shit for them. Not only that I couldn't do well, but like that I knew somebody else could do better than me on my best day. Now, like scarcity model is like, but Kiese, if you don't try, you maybe won't get another, but fuck that shit. Love is love is like Deesha can do that shit way, way, way better than me. Nafisa can do that better than me. Robert Jones can do that better than me. So, Tremaine, so you might want to ask them. I think that if we continue to bring our best selves to this like that and talk about the scarcity model, I think we will keep getting better and be gateways, as you said, instead of gatekeepers. Child, they got lots of questions in here and we getting short on time. So let me, do you have a specific church background and how that gets you thinking about this topic? For Mary Bull.
Yes. So I was sent to church from a very young age by my mother and my grandmother. And I guess I'm a little slow because it was only this year when I had to start thinking about like the questions people would ask me about this book, did it dawn on me like the background of being sent to church, right? Because I knew my grandmother would say things like, well, I'm gonna go to church when I get right, and I always thought, well, I thought you go to church to get right, so it was really confusing to me. And so my mother and my grandmother didn't go to church until I was in college, right? And they were in a different phase of their lives. But I realized only this year, putting two and two together, that because you know how it is, your mama is your mama, your grandma is your grandma. You don't see them through the lens that society sees them. And when you were here in Pittsburgh and we were at the Ace Hotel, the question somebody asked you, was it me? I don't know. Somebody asked you, what do we owe our mothers? Which I thought was an incredible question.
Yeah, that was,
and then
I think that was you.
That was me. Okay, I forgot. I was the one. And you said we owe it to them to see them as people and not just as our mothers. And I'm guilty. Like I did not make this connection, except that my mother and my grandmother both had children and never married. And my grandfather was from a church family. And that's the church they sent me to as a little girl with like other people, but they didn't go because of the shame and all of those other things. And so then when I got older, other people in the neighborhood, I would just go to church with the neighborhood kids wherever. So we went to AME, Baptist, Kojic, Pentecostal. We were in all the churches. And then as a teenager, Missionary Baptist Church on my dad's side, that's where that family went. And so I went to church and I was watching the women, and then puberty starts hitting and I'm like, they real holy, but like, do they masturbate? Do they have sex? Do they like sex? I mean, clearly they had sex, they had kids, but what does that mean? And what does it mean for me?
Right.
And so that's because I was kind of fixated on these women and the women outside of the church too, because they looked like they had were having a lot more fun. But over here, you told me they're going to hell. I don't want to go to hell, but I do want to have fun. I don't know what to do with this stuff, and then you just kind of grow up and none of that gets resolved. And in my early 20s, I married. Before I was 30, I had a kid. And so the connection between all of that and these stories is when I first started writing fiction. I wasn't thinking I want to write about the church or I want to write about church ladies. I wanted to write about dissatisfaction. And so because I was dissatisfied, but I was not comfortable writing nonfiction about what was going on with me in my life. So I would fictionalize these dissatisfied women, and they were all in the church. So I had 3 different novels I started at different times, and they all had church ladies in them. And so that was what I call my first fiction impulse, was to write about dissatisfied women. And then that one novel, I made a lot of progress, and then I stalled. And then my agent was like, well, maybe, you've been writing these other stories on the side. Maybe that could be a collection. Maybe that's less daunting and overwhelming than a novel. Let's try that. What do you think? And I was like, great idea. So it was my agent who saw the church lady, thread. And then I got intentional and wrote the rest of it.
I love that. Yeah. there's so many questions here, and we don't have much time, but I want to get to some of them that I think might not have. I want to get a few in as possible. So Tracy Thomas, incredible creator, of the Stacks podcast. If y'all haven't, yes, please get on the Stacks. What, if anything, do awards mean to you or say to you about your work?
So again, I'm a watcher, I'm a listener. I'm a big Kiese Laymon fan, and Kiese Laymon don't talk about awards and stuff like that. So I'm not real pressed. And then there are people who have gotten awards, writers that I've admired, and they were so unhappy because they didn't get these other awards. And I'm sitting there like, well, damn, you got books though. Like I hadn't even finished the book.
You got books though.
Can I just finish a book? Can I just get a book published? And so what I saw years ago was that the way that people can be about awards it's never enough. It's never enough, right? And so the award can't be the thing. But I also don't want to be that person who's like, I don't care about awards. I mean, I'm absolutely thrilled to be nominated for a National Book Award, full stop. I would also be happy if I had not been nominated for a National Book Award. I'd be happy because of the people who send me messages and say, I saw myself in these stories, or I'm reading this with my mom and my dad.
Word.
Or my 80-year-old grandmother I think she would like this. And I'm like, well, I'll send her a copy. So I sent this 80-year-old grandma a copy for her birthday, and Miss Margaret wrote me back. And I was all shamed, like, oh, she gonna read all this sex book, and she wrote it back, and she was like, I love this book. You're like, that makes me happy that people connected with the stories, right? And so I welcome the awards. I'm thankful, but I never want the awards to become a distraction and a place of, where I can't enjoy the stories and the people and the connection, and a source of dissatisfaction because I'm worried about the next award. I'm worried about I don't want it to be that.
Word. Right. That's absolutely. This is a tough one. I don't know. Taliba? I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Taliba. All right. So Taliba says, did you have to shift your perception of what is profane or just pleasurable and sacred to create the magic that I felt reading these stories?
No, I didn't think of it in those terms. I had to come to trust myself. I had to come to trust the readers in general, like the sort of the future audience, and also trust my friends who read my stories before they go out into the world, right? I trust y'all to be like, okay, that's too much, right? And what you saw here, nobody said that, so I'm like, good, we're gonna go with it. Like, there's a line that Tashida says, a couple of things she says in Dear Sister. She's the sister with the text with the
I love her.
And I wrote the one line, I want to say it was like rectal rooter or something like that. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just wrote that. We'll see what happens. And nobody blinked. So I'm like, all right, we'll go with that. The original draft of Peach Cobbler took Olivia and Trevor into adulthood, and they reconnect. She owns a bakery. Both of their parents have passed away. He comes into the bakery one day. They haven't seen each other since they were kids. And he tells her that he knew the secret. He found out about their parents. And so here they've been carrying these burdens, the secret, for so long. And then I had a scene where they go in the kitchen in the back of the bakery, and they make a peach cobbler and they have sex. And it was like fun. And it wasn't like, graphic or, gratuitous or anything like that. It was very sweet. And nobody liked it. None of my friends who read it liked it. They just was like, nah, this is not how no, that's not working. And so I let that go. But so that wasn't about anything being profane. But you know, I was prepared to hear from my friends who read early drafts if something was too much, you know. Yeah.
All right, we got 2 minutes.
Okay.
Ryan Canty,
Hey, Ryan.
Pittsburgh. I went to college with Ryan. I love that brother.
Small world.
Ryan, okay, so actually you might not want to answer this question, but let's go. If
bring
this
it.
book were to be adapted into a movie or miniseries, who do you think could play some of the characters in the book?
I'm not gonna assign them parts, but Anjanou Ellis, Sanaa Lathan, Tessa Thompson, Gabrielle Union, Viola Davis,
yes,
Jennifer Lewis. This is like my Kimberly Elise. Yes, and just it's just like it's like bountiful. Like there's so many roles here for Black women actors, and I can tease and say something's coming, y'all. Something's coming, y'all.
Okay, so it's 8:30.
Okay.
I want to say to all y'all who are still here, 145 of y'all, please do yourselves a favor. Love yourselves enough to read and reread. This is one of these books that I think makes you want to reread because of the intrigue, because of the pleasure, because we really don't get books like this. I mean, I haven't read this book before. So please, if you have it, reread it. If you don't have it, get it.
Thank you.
And Deesha, I just want to say thank you for willing this wonderful, incredible, lush piece of art into the world.
Thank you.
And you want to say anything else before we get up out of here?
I just thank you. I thank you for being so generous and again being a gateway. I cannot say enough how much that means to me, how much you mean to me, how much you mean to so many of us. So thank you for being you. I know that it's hard to do the things that you do as consistently and as lovingly as you do, but we appreciate you. I appreciate you and I love you.
I love you too. And I just think this book loves us. So thank you, fam, for creating it. All right, y'all. Thank y'all so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Katie and Greenlight Bookstore.
Deesha and Kiese, I want to thank you both so much for that fantastic discussion. And thanks to everybody for showing up. And if you miss any of tonight's discussion, or if you just want to watch it again, we will be posting the recording to our YouTube. So please look out for it there. And don't forget to buy your copy of The Secret Lives of Church Ladies in-store or online at greenlightbookstore.com. Thanks so much again to you both. And thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Love you guys. Bye. Bye.